Welcome back to the Becoming Her podcast.
So
we today, you guys, are going to be talking about perfectionism and letting go this need to this unrealistic expectation that everything is going to be perfect all of the time and how we let that go. And this is something that I feel like a lot of females struggle with. And this is something that I know both Anne and I are both extremely passionate about, but something that you work with, I mean, just day in and day out in your practice. So I'd really love to, from your point of view, kind of define perfectionism and what you see that as, and how, like, what's the first step of working towards being able to let go of this unrealistic expectation?
Yeah, well, what I want to burst a bubble here on this because I think that perfectionism is one of those things that we almost, especially in America and in other cultures, they do this as well. We almost use it as a badge of honor, So I remember when I was doing this back in undergrad, doing like the sample interviews and getting some experience, and they would always come back to, well, what do you think? What's your best traits? What are your worst traits? And everyone tongue in cheek would say, well, of course, my worst trait is that I'm a perfectionist. And what we meant by that is I'm really detail oriented. I'm going to be harder on myself than you'll be. And so that you can trust me to be a really good worker. But here's the bubble that I want to burst is that we often confuse perfectionism with ambition and don't understand that perfectionism is actually about shame. And shame is an ultimate deal breaker for problem solving. And shame is actually an ultimate deal breaker for effective change.
That's a really
Um, and, and and I say that because what shame is that there's something inherently wrong with me. And so when we're struggling with perfectionism, what we are doing is that we have generally unrealistic expectations for what I should be able to achieve and accomplish based upon some unrealistic standard that I have set in my head about what my capabilities are. And now what I'm going to do is every single time I try something or I do something or I make a mistake, I'm going to beat myself up for all the little nuanced things that I've done that have failed instead of the ways that I have actually succeeded or done something cool. And if it's okay, Nicole, I know we talked about this before, and I want to use
She's like rubbing her hands, you guys. She's about to like grill me right now. So
I am not going to go
on the spot therapy that I'm getting. So, I mean, she told me we were going to do this, but I was like, okay, let's see what we can work up here. See, like, let's see where emotion comes to play. Cause
do I have a fake one that I want to share? That's what So what I wanted to ask you, has there been a time recently or, in a time that really stands out to you that you can recall trying something and failing at it and failing so badly at it that you kind of just didn't even want to come out of the closet? Like you're like, all right, I'm done. This is it. And I just need to let the earth swallow me whole. That's what I like to talk about, Shane. The earth just swallows me whole right now.
yeah. And we kind of like briefly tapped on this, but that's when you said that before we started recording, the first thing that came to my mind was entrepreneurship. And this is something I hate even calling, just because for me, this truly is my passion and I hate calling it a business, but at the end of the day, you know what I mean? It is a business, and it has been the most humbling experience I have ever had. And so not only do you have this need to be perfect, right? Because this is my baby. Like, and I want to present it absolutely perfectly. And this need that I can't be flawed, and I have to do like those that see me need to perceive me as this being 100% that, you know what I mean? And so it has, when I say humbling, I feel like that's just putting it lightly, but it's one of those things that not only do I feel like my employees need to perceive me as being perfect, and the babes on our team need to perceive me as being perfect, and then you have this added pressure of the way that you're viewed on social media, as well as this whole other like nuance to things that I think is only added to my need to feel perfect and present myself perfectly and my ideas perfectly and my thought processes perfectly. And social media is its whole animal in itself. And I actually just had a pretty interesting experience. So I posted a video. A gal didn't necessarily agree with my viewpoints, and that's fine. Not everybody agrees with me, right? And that's like totally fine. And she had made a comment. I can't even remember what the original video was about. And she had made a comment, and she was like, "You can't or no, she said a calorie deficit and menopause doesn't work. And I wanted to clarify that because I do feel like that's a very common misconception. So I actually responded back to her comment with a video and, just basically said, look, I understand that menopause can make things more challenging, but at the end of the day, it's the law of thermodynamics. You have to be in a calorie deficit losing body fat. And her point was I'm eating more food and I'm down 35 pounds and I'm eating more food than I ever thought possible. And I was like, I love that for you. And that's everything that I preach. I said, but where you're what you're not understanding is you eating more food has allowed you to stay adherent to your calorie deficit, right? And so that's why I was going back and forth with her. And she got so nasty and just started attacking. And to the extreme. And I don't really need to dive into the nitty gritty, but I was like, this
I
is
got triggered.
brutal, right? And so I was just like, did I not explain it perfectly? Did I not like present myself perfectly? Did I not? And so you start to beat yourself up over those things. And I mean, for a second, it kind of made me want to hibernate. So there is an area where it can feel overwhelming. And I think the added pressure of social media has almost amplified my need to be perfect, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to ask a side question if I can. You can answer it. You cannot answer it if you don't want to, but I think it might be useful for the listeners. What what did mistakes look like for you growing up? Where did you learn that you couldn't make mistakes?
This is going to get deep. This is going to get deep. So my childhood, for sure, I didn't have the best childhood growing up. My mom was not around. She was an addict. She was, like I said, not present. It was put on me to take care of my younger siblings. She really wasn't, she wasn't positive, nor was she nurturing. And so there was this need to, it's like if my sisters didn't have dinner at a certain time, or if, right. And so all that accountability got put on me. And so as I was young, like I was always walking around eggshells on her because if it wasn't done to her way of she thought it should be done, even though there was never any sort of like guidance of how that should be done, then I got reprimanded for that. So it
And
was
and can I ask what was the message that you received from that?
that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't ever doing anything like to expectation. And it doesn't matter. It didn't matter how much I would be so excited to show her something like, oh, look, and then she would find something else that wasn't done correctly kind of thing. And so it just didn't matter how much I tried. It was never enough. It was never enough.
What do you think that ultimately you needed to hear from mom as a little girl?
I love you. Thank you. Like even just those little things would have gone so far. I appreciate you.
Can I throw something out there?
Yeah.
I see your heart. I see how hard it is for you to keep showing up. And I love how caring you are. And me blowing up at you is because I'm anxious and it has nothing to do with you.
Mm, yeah, that would have gone a long way.
And I want to notice that, like, one of the things that you're talking about, it's never enough. Um, that I'm never enough. And so how does that critical voice, as an example, so when, that the example of that video response and then what happened, and it sounds like that other person got really triggered with this.
Oh, yeah.
Um, how did that critical voice show up in that moment?
Mm.
What did you notice yourself saying to yourself about your responses?
A little bit of shame was there for me just because I felt like I couldn't communicate clearly enough. And I take that personally when people like misconstrue the way that I say things or I do things. And I felt like, okay, maybe I said something and she took it as a personal attack and I wasn't clear enough and I wasn't trying to. And so I was starting to take that kind of on myself as something I did wrong. And even though I was like, it was wholeheartedly good intentions to say, I can understand why you would think that it doesn't work in menopause. And I was really just trying to guide her in a space of, but this is what has to happen. And I was hopefully trying to use it as like a teaching experience. And it definitely did not go that way. So, or she didn't perceive it that way, I guess I should say.
Uh-huh. So and then I'm wondering if a part of that was not just I did it wrong, but what was wrong with me that I even did that? Like Like, what was I thinking?
A little bit, like, and I think there's, particularly with social media, why did I even bother, right? Because
Yeah.
there's so many different, like, there's so many different personalities and people coming at you in different ways, and you're just like, you try to appease this side, and then you get people upset on this side, and it definitely, there's a little bit of that for sure.
Mhm. So I want to ask you, what is it that you liked that you did in your response? What is it that you were proud of? Regardless of her reaction, what did you notice after the fact that was really cool about what you did?
The proud of, I mean, I really pride myself on being able to educate, and educate in a way that obviously empowers people, hopefully, just because the industry that we're in, and obviously everything that I preach is me going against toxic diet culture. And it was funny because she was chastising and she was getting upset with me, but I'm like, if you take 5 minutes to look at my videos, everything that you're saying is everything that I preach. It really is, right? And I was like, almost trying to convince her, no, like, this is what I do, this is what I preach, like. And that's why I told her, I said, if you just took 5 minutes to go look at five other of my videos, you go, holy crap, she is completely different than most quote unquote influencers out there. And she kept calling me an influencer, and I hate that term because it makes me feel like I'm everything against me as influencing.
Same.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. And so I was trying to almost like convince her, like, go look at my other stuff. Like, you would really, and almost like, you would like me. You would really like me. It was this need to like appease her and be like, if you just gave me a second or you gave me a chance, you would see that this is everything that you're saying is everything that I preach. So
Mhm. So, and I want to notice something that's really cool here. Where was your heart and even responding to this video? For her, for the audience that was going to witness it, like, where was your heart? What is it that you were most wanting to accomplish?
to give people this aha moment, right? Like of empowerment, because I feel like people look at menopause and they're like, it's doom and gloom. And I love being able to empower women. No, it just doesn't have to be this way. You have so much more control than what you ever give yourself credit for. And it, like I said, it definitely went south on me.
So you wanted to empower, you wanted to give hope. And what does that say about you as a person? That that's where your heart was.
Yeah, for sure. That's everything that I stand for and everything that I preach. And I love being able to lift others up. And I love being able to, that's been the most fulfilling piece of what I do, is being able to show people that, they are so much more powerful than what they ever give themselves credit for. Just because I have been in their shoes, I've walked miles in those stilettos. My feet were really freaking tired. I understand how it can feel, and the doom that and gloom that comes with, being overweight and being frustrated and feeling hopeless. So I love the sense of empowerment that I can bring with, what I'm able to teach and what I'm able to preach.
Mhm. So it tells me that you're an encourager, that you're brave, and that you're resilient.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that fit?
Yeah, that does fit. It's kind of funny when you say those, it's like a part of me has a hard time even accepting that, like when you say that, but I'm like, yes, 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 yes.
Uh-huh. So, and I want to notice something about this, because what we kind of walked through is a little sample of what I do on a daily basis when I'm working with people on developing shame resiliency. Is that now, and I want to ask you another part, before I finish that sentence. What is it, in looking back now? Is there anything that you would have done differently about that?
Yeah, I tried to start the video off with some humor, right? And so I just like I related it to like a Jeopardy reference, and I was trying to be funny and just lighthearted about it. And I think maybe the way that I started it, she took as possible sarcasm, and that's I was beating myself up over that as well. I was like, okay, maybe she didn't take my humor the same way I was trying to come across with my humor. And so again, I can't perceive, you can only control the way that what you do and how you react to things. I can't control how other people respond. But I did find myself, like you said, trying to almost beg her to and convince her that I'm like, if you just give me a chance, like go look at these other videos. I promise you, you really would like what I preach. But she just wasn't having it. So if I could have changed anything, maybe not coming out with, maybe opening it in a way that everybody would responsive to, maybe not just the humor side that some people could maybe take a completely different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, maybe leading a little bit more with your heart of
Yeah,
empowerment,
yeah, yeah,
encouragement,
yeah,
like that,
yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I've been there, I've done this. And so what I wanted to say about this is I want to notice that what we did is kind of a tiny little snapshot of what it is that I work with people on. And in working through perfectionism, where many of us get stuck, is just simply on the negative self-talk because I didn't like the reaction that somebody. So what I hear a lot of people say is, well, I must have done it awful because they reacted like this. And I want to notice something really cool about noticing the difference between my intention and the impact that I have. Your intention was in the right place. Your heart was in the right
Mhm.
place. You're a very compassionate person. Like you want to give, you want to help, you want to like empower. You are 100% on spot with what it is heart wise that you wanted to do. But the impact, and there's lots of reasons why the impact goes left of center. The impact that it has wasn't what you were hoping for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we get stuck in perfectionism, what happens is we only stop at the negative self talk and the impact. We only go, well, I failed because it didn't go the way that I wanted it to, or because this person reacted this way. And I want to think about this even in relationship to food. Like many of us have struggled with food, if not a majority of our adult life, our entire lives. And we have tried every diet north of the sun, right? And plus some, and created some variations ourselves on, well, I'll do lazy keto, or I'll try the low carb with carbs on Saturday, and I'll try to do the low fat with the low carb, and I'll try
Part-time
my,
keto.
right? That's right. And we have tried so hard. And if we keep coming back to, there's something wrong with me, I'm just broken, it's never going to be good enough, or I failed yet again because I binged on Saturday, or we're missing the 5 days of success that came before that. But not only are we missing the 5 days of success that became before that, we stop problem solving, and we stop looking at our heart and our intention and our character and who we are as human beings. And instead, what we do is we evaluate who we are as human beings based upon the outcome of my behaviors.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was
And that's
masking
so
myself with her thoughts instead of knowing wholeheartedly where I was coming from. And I get what you're saying with that, right? Yeah.
and it's so hard because to develop shame resiliency, which actually moves against perfectionism, and moves towards ambition and being better versions of ourselves, we have to be able to do both the good and the bad. So we have to be able to acknowledge the things that we have done well on,
Mhm.
and as well as the things that we need to continue to work on. That's where ambition actually comes from. But what without shame resiliency, all we have is, I need to be better at forcing people to not have reactions like that. So I need to do a better job of making sure that I'm evaluating how somebody's responding to let me know that I'm doing a good job,
Mhm. Mm. No, that makes,
right?
yep, that makes sense.
Or I need to do a better job of following to the T this diet or this methodology or something like that. Um, and what we miss is generally the challenges with creating lifelong changes are actually incredibly slow and very methodical.
Mhm.
So we
What
go too
I see a
big,
lot.
too fast.
No, I totally agree with that. What I see a lot with the clients that we work with, particularly on the nutrition side of things, is this all or nothing mentality that produces all or nothing results. And so what we come across is, if I can't do all of the things perfectly all of the time, then I'm going to resort to doing none of the things. And
Yep.
there's no gray area, right? It's black or it's white. And I don't know how to operate in the gray. And so really what we teach and what we preach is understanding how to operate in the gray. Because on my end as a coach, I would much rather see you succeed 75% of your goals 7 days a week than I would you trying to do 100% of your goals. It'd be unrealistic 2 to 3 days out of the week. And then you're just completely off track the other 4 to 5 days, right?
Mhm.
And so really owning the space that, this never will be perfect. Well, there'll be days that you hit things 100% and you feel really good, right? But we we set our expectations to that, and that becomes the standard high bar of, when I hit things 100%, that means I'm doing all of it correctly. And then we don't allow ourselves to celebrate when we've hit the 80%, or when we have to pivot. And maybe this wasn't perfect when we pivoted, but damn, did I make really great decisions with the not so great options that I had. And so celebrating those things is something that, because again, it's the, well, dinner kind of got thrown out the window and soccer practice went late, and then we end up having to go out and I didn't hit my macros. And and so I'll have clients, but we went to this place and then they're just like beating themselves up because they quote unquote got off track. And I'm like, but what would you, even 2 months ago would have ordered and what would you have done in that situation versus what were the choices that you made today? Because the choices that you made today with what you have and the things that we're working through and these habits and the values that we're starting to instill are completely different, I guarantee, than again what you would have done 2 months ago before we started working together. So why don't we celebrate those wins opposed to the fact that plans changed and I wasn't able to hit my macros kind of thing. So I'd love to hear your thought process here.
Well, yes, that is it. The living in the gray, but so as you were talking, one of the things that I was thinking about in terms of learning how to live in the gray, learning how to identify the things that would motivate other people, right? So, and I want you to think about this, and for all the listeners, I want to take just a really brief moment, and I want you to think about what it is that you say to yourself when you mess up. The worst things, not the best things. I don't care about the best things right now. Let's, for the sake of argument, we're going to go with the worst things. Okay. Um, and I want you just to come up with the top 5 things that you say when you fail yet again at your diet, yet again at the meal plan, yet again at whatever target that you have. Develop those, identify those top 5 things. For me, on a bad day, it's I'm at it again. I might as well just go ahead and give up. See, I knew I wasn't going to get it. Yep, I'm just broken. You're just really messed up, and you need to let go of this.
It's never going
Whatever
to work
success.
for me. Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
Okay.
100%.
Now, what I want you to think about, and for those of us that are parents, is going to be kind of painful. What I want you to think about is picking your best friend, your husband, one of your children, and I want you to think about them messing up and saying the exact same thing to them.
Yeah. And yep. Hurts.
And
Like,
what do you think? And for those of us that have had parenting moments where we blow up and maybe we say some of these things, right? Like we're like, this, I feel crushed with this, right? Well, but I want to notice something about this because we all have hard moments. What do you think is going to happen to our relationship with our best friend, our husband, our child, if we keep showing up consistently like that every single time they make a mistake?
lack of trust.
Do you think that they're going to be motivated to change, or do you think that they're going to change because they're going to be scared of you? Do you think that they're going to hide things from you? Do you think that they're going to lie to you? Right. So if our kid struggles and gets an F on a test and we blow up and go, you're better than this, you know better, I've taught you more, you know how to do math. Why are you right? We shame them, we belittle them. Our child is now going to learn, I'm going to hide bad grades from you. I'm not going to talk about this, or I'm so scared of getting that reaction again. I'm going to try really, really, really hard to never get a bad grade ever again. Well, that feels like it worked, right? It feels like belittling them, shaming them actually created some positive change. But the problem is that it actually didn't create positive change. It created performance. And
Mm.
this is what happens when we struggle to accept the shades of gray for ourselves, is that we're constantly in a place of performing to make the coach happy. I mean, I don't know the number of people that have come to me and said, I haven't been honest with you. I kind of knew that. Um, I've been binging still. I've been struggling with this. I really haven't been doing this. Yeah, I know. Right. Because when we're stuck in perfectionism, we're stuck in shame. And that means that I want to hide all the things that I struggle with. I can't problem solve it because I'm the problem.
Oh, that's powerful.
And
Yeah.
so learning how to identify the things that I'm actually proud of doing and this is hard. It's a hard skill set to learn. Learning how to take, just like we did. What is it that you like that you did? Where was your heart? Your heart was in the right place, right? The impact wasn't, but your heart was 100% on spot.
Yeah.
Your heart's in the right place when we're following this meal plan. You're trying really hard. You're trying your hardest. I get it. And we've got to cultivate some resilience around those failures. We have to stop looking at only the failures and look at also the successes. We have to start looking for even small successes. And I have some people that are like, literally, the success was, well, I didn't start with the donuts this time. I ended with them. I started with the salad.
But
Okay.
so yeah, that's a win. Call being able to recognize the wins when all we want to do is hyperfixate on the quote unquote losses or what we didn't do right is such a pivotal defining moment when you can at least
Yes.
acknowledge where, you know what I mean? Like you said, whether that's where your heart was at or where your intentions were at, you're at least being mindful of. And that's the first place all of this starts, is the mindfulness in and around it. So I'd be
Mhm.
curious, because I know you work with a lot of different, I mean, I know you work with a lot of people who struggle with their relationship with food and eating disorders and whatnot. And you also work with, you know, through other areas of people's lives, whether it be relationships and not whatnot as well. I feel like when it comes to, particularly for females, and I'm not saying males don't struggle with this as well, but particularly for females, I feel like it's this unrealistic expectation when it comes to our health and fitness journey that we don't really have in other areas of life. And I see you shaking your head, so I think you know where I'm going with this, but it's like, and what I reference as the tire popping mentality, right? It's, if you're driving down the road and you pop a tire, are you going to pull over and automatically slash the other three? No, like it just doesn't happen that way, right? Or your kid
Hope
comes home
not.
that they failed their math test, and you be like, that's it, drop out. That's it, you're done with. Like you're just, I just don't think you're ever going to be anything in life like that. You just might as well quit. But in health and fitness, particularly as females, we take on, it's like, okay, if I don't completely do all of these things perfect, then everything else goes out the window. And it's just this unrealistic A, expectation that we put on ourselves, but B,
Mhm.
mentality that we have around this journey that we don't really translate and carry over. Not to say that we don't have areas of perfectionism in other areas of our life. I'm not saying that at all, but we
Mhm.
really don't translate this extreme like we do in this area. Do you see where I'm going at with that?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of it has to do with the cultural standards that are set for us. So when they did a study in Fiji, I don't remember the year. I think it was the 1980s, and it was in this tribe that had no access to television, and they put a TV, and a year later, and in this population, by the way, they prided themselves on being voluptuous, and because that meant that your man had enough money and they could provide well for you, and so you were well rounded, and you were a good reproducer. And they introduced TV into this population, and within one calendar year they had eating disorders that were very similar to the United States at the time. And I do not remember the name of the study. It's a legitimate study. I cannot remember it off the top of my head because I didn't have it queued up in my brain. But what's phenomenal about that is the impact of media and what it is that our culture does to sell women on stuff,
Mm,
sell women on diets, sell women on this unrealistic image. And sometimes
right. Yeah.
yes, sometimes the images that we are seeing are of 14-year-old girls dressed to look like 35-year-old women, and very seductive and very, or we have images of women that are compilations of 7 different women. And then and then they got all these modifications and all of these, there's sorry, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night, so words aren't coming to me real fast. But they get edited out essentially of their humanity. And what often happens even on social media is what we see is the best versions of people. And to be fair, I don't know that I actually really want to see the worst versions of people. I think we see enough of that anyway in the world.
Yeah.
But we compare what we believe is everyone's standard day
Mhm.
to our worst day. And we go, oh my gosh, their kids always look put together. They're always, fill in the blank. They look amazing. They're pregnant. They still weigh less than I, and they're out running a marathon, and it's 90 degree. And we look at ourselves and we're like, I can't even make it outside for a walk. And what that comparison does is actually create some shame for us. But we're going off of an unrealistic standard that we're not actually talking about. And the elephant in the room is most of us aren't going to post our worst days on social media,
True. So true.
be it bad, good, or otherwise. But yet, most of us assume that that's everyone's reality
Yeah.
is the best day, and the edited version, and the 14-year-old that looks like a 35-year-old, and so on and so forth. And what happens is it makes it really hard for us to appreciate what we have, what it is that we're doing, what it is that we're proud of even doing, and how it is that we're showing it to the world.
No, that's powerful, and that's a really great way of framing things for people, because I do feel like you said, the social media has only amplified this on so many levels, and this is every other, whether it be like your physique, whether that be your possessions, the car that you drive, the house that you live in. Is we're always comparing and we're always trying to keep up with the Joneses kind of concept. And it quite literally is, it can be defeating. Defeating is a really great word for that if you don't have awareness in and around that, and perception as well. So I think that's a really great perception when you think about it that way. How would you, like, what would be some tips that you would give our listeners right now? And we're talking about being able to be mindful of these things. And we're talking about being able to celebrate the wins that don't necessarily feel like wins, maybe in the moment, because it may not be perfect, or things didn't pan out exactly how you wanted them to, or you didn't meet the expectations that you set forth for yourself. What are some like solid tactics that you can give people to be able to recognize in the moment the things that they should be proud of? Or, and this is what I love about coaching, because it has that outside perception or a perspective, right? You have somebody on the outside saying, hey, and I love when the girls are like, Nicole, I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Yes. Right. And I'm able to highlight things for them, and I'm able to point things out that they just can't see because they're so blinded by what didn't happen and can't acknowledge or accept or be aware of the things that did happen. So are there any like tools that you can give our listeners to be able to maybe work through that on their own if they're not working with a coach, or they don't have somebody that they work with directly?
Yeah. So some of what we did, that internal reflection, and this is a skill set that, and when you think of it almost like exercise and a muscle, that when we haven't used it enough and what we've only focused on are the negatives, it is initially extremely hard to identify these things.
Mhm.
And so, sometimes what I'll do is I kind of think of it like, I'm sure my kids love the fact that I'm a therapist at the dinner table. And I'm like, okay, you can't get up from the dinner table until you say one thing that you liked about your day or that you're proud of doing. Right. And they're like, mom. And I'm like, I know, I know. But it's a practice. And so just like a lot of practices, learning how to spot something that I liked. And sometimes what we're looking for is actually really, really tiny in comparison to the big things that we feel like we failed on. But those tiny things are going to grow us so much more than the big failures, ironically.
Mhm.
So, again, some of what I will have people identify are things like, well, I started with the salad. Like, great. Like you were in, like your heart was in the right place. You did it. Like, absolutely. You tried it. Or I stopped binging after 4 cookies and didn't eat the whole 12. Yay. That's
Huge.
huge.
That's huge. Yep.
Huge. Right. That's huge because there were a lot more cookies that you didn't eat. Or I didn't keep going after I did this, or I realized I was doing this and then I stopped. Well, here's the fun part about this is that anytime that we're in a place where we're binging and we're kind of mindlessly doing anything, you are not responsible for that at that point. You are only responsible for when you have the awareness in that moment of what you were doing.
Mm.
So if you're shoving food in your mouth and then suddenly you're like, oh, I've eaten past my meal plan, or I like right in the moment that you realize it, that's actually when you have all the power. It's like a fork in the road, right? In that moment, you can choose, am I going to keep doing this or am I going to not? And what happens to a lot of us, because that inner critic, is we go, well, I already blew it.
Yep, exactly.
Might as well, quote unquote, enjoy it. I have never met a person after a binge who said, man, that was thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah, no. Mm.
Usually the first few bites, usually the first dessert or two, but after a while they're like, I'm miserable and I'm not even sure why I'm still eating.
Mm.
And so learning how to spot these little micro moments of change, right? Learning how, and sometimes what I tell people to do is, at the end of the day, what would make you most proud of yourself? And some days, because I am so busy, the thing that would make me most proud is sitting down with one of my sons to ask him how his day went.
The little
And
thing.
it's not that we're not having discussions at the dinner table, but it's like, oh, I want to make sure that he knows how special he is to me. So I need to go in, rub his back, ask him what he liked about his day, what was really frustrating for him. And I walk away, and it doesn't matter what I got accomplished that day. That was the highlight of my day.
Yeah, that's powerful. I use a gratitude journal concept with my clients a lot, and I make them first thing in the morning. I'm like, this is something that I want you to do, and I want you to be very intentional before you pour your coffee, before you do anything. Like we would send a gratitude journal, and I'm like, I want to write on your nightstand right next to you, and 3 things every single day that I just want you to be grateful, what you're grateful for. And I said, but I don't want you repeating these things. So, right. So once you work past that, I'm grateful for my kids, and I'm grateful for, all of the easy things that are just easy to gravitate towards. And you start to have to get really mindful. Sometimes for me, gratefulness would be I'm a fall, like Ann and I have this in common. I love all things fall, you guys. I am I am pumpkin spice, apple, cobbler, snicker, doodle, like all things, give it to me. And when fall season starts to roll around, it makes your girl's heart so happy. So little things like snickerdoodle creamer, or just little tiny things that make my heart that happy, that give me just a little tiny extra pep in my step, right? And you start to appreciate, and it may sound like stupid or insignificant in the moment, but when you can start to appreciate those tiny small things, it sets your day up differently, right? When you wake up, instead of this, oh, I gotta get up and go to the gym and I'm gonna be wait for, and all this, like, that's where your mind instantly goes. And you can start it with just, some gratitude, and you can force yourself to be, appreciative of the things that we tend to overlook. Like, I just feel like we tend to overlook, and I get they are small things and they're easy to overlook, but when you can appreciate them a little bit more, I feel like the awareness around things just becomes, I mean, tenfold when you just start to be a lot more mindful of things. So I love that concept. And it's funny because, like I said, when you start to really have to, you get past and you can't quote unquote repeat things, you have to force yourself to, like, what am I grateful for and what am I overlooking? What are these small things that I'm overlooking that, I really truly have a lot to be grateful for. So
That's really cool. The One of the ways that I work on compulsive exercise and moving people from a place of dreading exercise to a place that they actually enjoy it is by paying attention to other things in the environment that they like a little bit more.
mm,
Um, so with a lot of people who engage in compulsive exercise and then learning how to actually have a new relationship with their bodies and with exercise itself, we wind up looking at things like, I love the way that the air smells. I love listening to the birds in the morning. I love the fact that I went farther than I ever have, or I saw something new, or I was able to help somebody or high five somebody on another run that looked like they were really struggling. And so, but a part of this, just like you said, Nicole, requires intentionality.
mm,
This stuff, especially if we've practiced this inner critic, and by the way, that inner critic didn't exist because you were flawed. That inner critic was given to you by somebody growing up. That is how it is for all of us. And I want you to think about it like this. As children, have you ever met a little child, like a toddler, saying, I just suck at everything. I need to let it go? Like, little kids are endlessly, ridiculously hopeful.
optimistic, and they fall down. How many times do they fall down and they just keep getting back up, right? Learning to walk. A child falls down 50,000 times before they actually take their first, like, fluent few steps. And, but it's such a great way to perceive things, though. It's like, if we gave up, I mean, just how quickly we want to give up on things. And you compare that to a child that's learning to walk and they keep falling down and they keep getting back up, kind of concept. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
But that inner critic, if we let that inner critic ride, and if for many of us that inner critic has been riding shotgun most of our life, from somewhere early in childhood, when we received that inner critic, that voice of a parent, a coach, another peer, a teacher, and we mindlessly automated this and practiced it over and over and over again. Well, when we work on gratitude, we work on being proud of ourselves and liking the things, it does require a great deal of intentionality to fix that. It does require constantly showing up day in and day out going, okay, well, I sucked at this and I sucked at this and I sucked at this. All right, what do I like that I did? Right, these are the conversations I have. I'm like, okay, well, you're not gonna leave this until you find something. And learning how to do that is a practice. It is not a state of being. It's not like joyful people just simply exist. Joyful people are intentional practices of looking for the good.
Yep. We never get there. It's not, and I love that you bring this up, this intentionality with it, because this is something I preach and I talk about often, that the goalpost always moves, just as human beings. We set a goal, we achieve a goal, and then we move that post, right? And we never get to this ending destination. It takes mindfulness, it takes continuing, it takes continuing education, it takes all of these things to continue to evolve. And I feel like we think that we're going to get to that ending destination, that's just going to be it. And it's like, I won't have to, I don't have to learn anymore. I don't have to, like, continue to work towards this. I'm not going to have to continue to put effort towards this. And that just is not how it works. Like, it takes intentionality, and it's, again, we continue to move that goalpost, and it's going to continue us to continue to improve. And be mindful of a new set of goals, right? Like we master one thing and then we're just going to have a new set of goals. And that's just how we are as humans. And I think that that's something that's overlooked often. And I want to talk about this, and this will be kind of what we can wrap up on this. I know most people, when they start particularly a health and fitness journey, it's usually very much so motivated by their appearance, right? Like they're trying to change something externally. And it's, you know what I mean? Whether that be they're trying to lose 10 pounds, or they want to fit back into a dress, or, you know, old pair of jeans, whatever the case may be. And there's nothing wrong with those goals. We all have those goals that allow us to motivate ourselves towards, you know, the bigger picture. And what I want to talk about though, and what I want to recognize is that when we're talking, until we stop chasing X, Y, or Z, and we only do something to chase X, Y, or Z goal, and we don't make this about who we are, it's like the need of perfectionism, I don't think will ever diminish, right? Because when this just starts to become who you are instead of what you do to chase a goal, when you're not perfect with it, it's like, this is just who you are. That's okay. But I feel like when we're doing this for a superficial, and again, not to say that the superficial can't be a part of why we start these things and continue to motivate you, because I have areas about my body that I allow the superficial to continue to motivate me to train in certain ways and to do things. And that's normal. But this is no longer just what I do because of that. This is truly who I am. And so when I don't, like in my personal health and fitness journey, I used to beat myself up if I didn't make it to the gym 5 days a week. And this wasn't perfect. And I didn't hit every macro. I've been there. I've been that girl, believe me. And so when it shifted from I only was doing this for this superficial reason to validate my worth to this is truly now just who I am. And so when I have days that I don't make it to the gym because something, you know, we always plan that not everything goes to plan or whatever the case may be. I no longer have to beat myself up over it, right? This isn't this need to be perfect, because if I'm perfect, if I'm not perfect, then I don't reach this goal. This is just not who I am. And so I wake up tomorrow and I do the things. And I feel like if there's a grace and be able to accept that we have to cultivate values, like there has to be a space where it stops to become so externally focused and it starts to become again just who you are instead of what you do. And when you can make that distinguishing, when you can make that, when the difference is clear, I feel like it truly eliminates the need to quote unquote be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
What do you
Yeah, so you're talking about the difference between what I like to phrase, and I think other providers can phrase this as well, as a worthiness hustle. So I'm hustling for my worth through external validation versus internal. It's an internal locus of control. So my ability to know from inside of me that I'm good enough, regardless of whether or not I hit my macros. This is character assignment and character definition. And one of the things that I want to say about that is that life is hard, period. Anything that we do that's worth doing is going to be hard. It is going to be work. It is going to be intentionality. And the sooner we come to grips with that, the easier life becomes.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about worthiness, who we are and what exists on the inside of us, that's already there, right? But if I want to be someone that is self-disciplined, if I want to be someone who lives with integrity, if I want to be someone who's kind and compassionate, that's how I see myself, then showing up every day, trying to be mindful of how my heart shows up. I'm not saying perfectly. We all have moments we flip somebody off driving. I try not to have them very often, try
Yeah.
to be compassionate, right? But we have moments, or we're saying things in the car to them, right? We all have weak moments. But if my heart tends to be in the right place and I tend to live with compassion, kindness, and grace, moments that I do that will be moments where I get to be curious about what happened and why it is that I got there, instead of a moment to beat myself up and tell myself that there's something wrong with me.
When I think making the distinction that not being perfect doesn't mean that you're weak. And that
Mm,
was something for me. It took a lot for me to work through that, right? Like I took that as I was weaker and I just realized I'm like, why am I struggling for words? I'm like, I haven't eaten since breakfast this morning. I've been going and I was like, holy crap, I'm hungry. My brain is not functioning. I'm like,
yep,
but I do think that there's a space of, because I would beat myself up if it wasn't perfect, then there was something wrong with me. I was weak or not worthy of. And so that is a really good point. It's a valid point. Yeah.
yep.
All right. Well, I think this has just been, I mean, I think it's been really powerful. I think this is something that every single person listening to this right now is going to resonate with. We all have, like you said, a need, or at some point of our life felt this need to be perfect. And we can't show up. If we're not showing up perfectly, then we might as well not do at all, kind of concept. And so being able to work through, and the biggest takeaway for, I hope, everybody listening to this right now is the mindfulness in and around that, and practicing just being more aware and more present in the moment is it's a game changer. Anything else to add to that, Anne?
You are worthy of love. You are good enough just the way you are. I have to always put in that little spiel.
That little gold nugget at the end.
That's right.
All right, you guys, we'll see you in the next episode. Ciao.
If this is helpful, give me a like, follow me, or subscribe for more.